Grin? Where is Grin going to be adopted? And this is where we talked about some of the communities like in Venezuela or other places in the world where actually using the coin is more important than just holding it. Holding it's great, but we want usage for Grin. And so if we were to get this Grin out to places in Venezuela or Indonesia, how are you going to localize that? How are you going to translate that into Spanish or other languages? And then how do you get that and feedback, if there are any changes that need to be made, back to Grin development? And so that's what we're going to talk about too in this session, is how you can work with the ecosystem and the community to not only coordinate the application development, get the user feedback that you may want or need from different communities around the world, and also get that feedback back to the Grin dev team. So I'm just going to put this up here for now. We'll come back to it later. But there are a number of resources that you can go to first of all, see what's out there in terms of the existing projects, coordinate and track some of the projects you want to put together, join the discussion, so on a regular call or discussion forum, talk to others who want to do the same thing, and then get updates. So you come to Grincon US to see what the agenda for today is. I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter on our website, and we'll continue to provide updates on what we're doing with this community throughout the years. So what I want to do is now just introduce some of our presenters, starting with Gavin from IDEO, Jasper from Wallet 713, Steve It from Superlinear, and then finally David Burkett, who's going to talk about Grin++. So let's start with Gavin, and I'm going to hand it over to Gavin. And then also we have a Q&A panel, just to do a quick intro to our Q&A panel headed up by Brayton here, so that we have some seed questions, and then we'll open up to the audience.
Hi, is there a slide for the product? Oh, hey, this is it. So I'm Gavin, I work at the IDEO Colab. And so for the last chunk of time, as a lot of work was being focused on the core protocol, I was looking at the web wallet and wanted to build just kind of a drop-in replacement. So we just had a project, we called it Smirk. And basically it's a user-friendly Grin client. So community-centered, I just started reaching out to people like Daniel and the team. Absurdly welcoming, thank you, by the way. And so there's just been community involvement in the design of this thing from day one. So IDEO, as the housing for this, we started doing design research. So we interviewed a ton of people who had no idea what crypto was, to people who have done a lot of wallet integrations, built wallets themselves. And we realized that the tricky points of interacting with Mimblewimble, or Grin in particular, were the interactive transactions. And so we ended up really pushing hard and leaning on the digital cash metaphor for this project, which is kind of what led to Smirk as an interface. So it's really minimal. It just focuses on it focuses on the question that you ask of, if we're just playing with digital cash, then what's necessary? You don't need all the bells and whistles. And so there's been a lot of abstraction. And so what you see here is there's drag and drop. There's just simple things that make Smirk a really nice web wallet. So yeah, that's kind of the gist. Yeah, so it's an Electron client. It's built just on top of the HTTP client, so it could be a replacement for the web wallet as it runs.
Yeah, how to interact with the actual Grin wallet? Are you using a JavaScript library? Oh.
No, so you can fire up a wallet listener from the Grin library, okay, and then interact that way.
So it's like RPC kind of?
Bingo.
Cool. Thank you.
Casey, yes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, what do you see, how do you see making things, the most promising way to make things easy to transact past transact by file? Of the different options out there beyond transacting by dragging and dropping files?
Coordination. I mean this sincerely. It's getting together, playing with it, getting people to use it, and understanding what they expect, and then being able to express that. So one of the simple ones was for transact by IP directly. It's just have a service that pings to see if the port is open, to know if you can even do the thing before, because that's where a lot of stumbling is in Gitter. People are like, hey, send me Grin. And so understanding the common tripping points and then getting together on the product side and saying, okay, how can we alleviate some of that stuff? And so coordination, but coordination after understanding.
Any other questions?
One. Yeah, you run a node locally. Eventually, we can bundle it up. That's why we built it in a particular way. But yeah, you're running on a Grin node locally, and that's where you're getting your information from. Mm-hmm. Not yet. It's built in a way that like we can get into that stuff later probably. But yeah, it's also built in a way that it's kind of like it's like what we're talking about. The core is really small, but it's intended to be used with services. So like you can drop in wallet or like is it Grinbox, the relayer, that could be dropped in as another mechanism because the hooks are there. So yeah, we'll talk though. Okay.
Someone had a call to action earlier about doing a MetaMask style thing, and given this is web technologies, how far off do you think that could be?
Very close. I meant to follow up with whoever was asking that question earlier. Yeah. So this is like really close to what you're talking about, and that's part of the intention in the build is to like be able to just port this pretty quickly into that type of a, yeah. So yeah, great question.
Right. Thanks. And we're done.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Gavin. And so for the next wallet that we'll feature, we'll hand it over to Jasper, talk about wallet 713.
And Daniel.
Okay, sorry, not Jasper, Daniel.
It's all right.
Thank you, Daniel.
Hi. Is there a clicker or? Oh, here we go. Either way. Right, and that should be an animated GIF. Right now it's not, but it should demo the product. Jasper, myself, and thank you, and a third person together form a team called Vault 713, and we're focusing on building core infrastructure solutions for Grin to make it easy to send, store, and swap Grin. We love Grin, but transactions ain't easy. The interactive format means that it requires a lot of coordination, as we heard in the previous talk, between the sender and the receiver. Grinbox is a transaction protocol that is 100% free and open source that makes it easy for you to send and receive grins with other parties. You get an address for your wallet. You handle the interactive transaction building off-chain. The transaction is then broadcasted onto the chain, but there's no additional data that comes onto the Grin blockchain. And it's completely async. You don't need to be online at the same time. It's like you have a little inbox for your Grin transactions that you can pull messages to and send to other users. It's a full end-to-end encryption. We don't read your messages or your data. And it supports federation. So if you want, you can run your own relay and your own server to keep control of your own data as well.
Yeah, so the thing is with Grinbox, we basically allow or enable all these advanced use cases, right? Because normally if you're transacting or, for example, if you're doing atomic swaps, then you have to send around a lot of files, which is not really practical. So with Grinbox, we try to, make it way easier. And one of the things we recently added was transaction proof. So basically, if you do a transaction with Grinbox, you automatically store basically the signed message, and it allows you to afterwards to export this proof and send it to anyone who claims that that you didn't send them money. And you can see an example here. We have a verify proof command, which basically verifies this. And so Grinbox basically allows us to do all these advanced things, which is, for example, multi-signature and atomic swaps. And we also have a solution for handling payments at scale, basically for merchants and pools and stuff. And we also have a cold storage solution, which integrates really nicely in this whole ecosystem. And that's it.
I should also say that we welcome any other wallet developer who wants to use Grinbox. It's open, it's free to use. There's documentation on grinbox.io to get started. And we really encourage other developers to integrate and use the transaction protocol. Thank you.
Any plans to make it so I don't need to use command line?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely want to get to a GUI, but at the moment, our kind of key focus is on infrastructure, making sure the transaction really works and performs, making it easy for other wallet developers to integrate as well. We have Wallet 713. We're going to be building on top of Wallet 713, enabling atomic swaps and cold storage solutions and merchant payments available as extensions and modules. But the key here is to kind of just get the pipe work for Grin established first.
Can you explain for merchant payments why it's needed?
That's a good question. Do you want to?
Yeah, so because Grin transactions are interactive, it might take a long time before, you know, so say I'm a pool and I want to pay out to my users. I have to engage in this transaction process, and it might take a really long time before this user decides to send their slate back so we can actually finalize the transaction. And in the meantime, basically your outputs are locked, right? And we basically figured out a way to avoid this whole output locking process and basically separate out the creating the payments from actually, you know, funding those payments. And then we basically have payment cycles in which all these completed transactions are batched into one big transaction, which then gets published to the blockchain.
So it really becomes much more efficient, and you can, rather than having these one-to-one transactions where you need to have a bunch of different outputs that you coordinate and keep track of the state and build these transactions, you can instead handle that with the merchant processor, batch them into one-to-many transactions where you just send, ultimately the final transaction is from one to many different users in a payment cycle. So it's much more kind of friendly for scalable, high-volume transaction processing.
Have you given any thought to DOS, like whether or not a Grin relay is a DOS vector? Like if somebody can publish a ton of spammy transactions and essentially network and, you know, exhaust all storage or bandwidth or other resources?
For sure, it can become a problem, yeah. But the thing is, we support federation, right? So we encourage all businesses and people who want to run their own relay. I mean, they can really do it, so to mitigate these kind of things.
Do the relays talk to each other, or do users pick a relay and that relay is used end-to-end?
Yeah, so the users talk directly to this relay. The relays are independent from each other at the moment, yeah.
Okay, we have to move to the next presentation.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Oh, sorry, go to the next slide. Okay, now we have Steve from Superlinear Gateway. Oh, sorry, Gordon Gateway, yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. Steve from Superlinear. We're basically creating a Grin gateway, and here it is. Yeah, so a couple months ago, you know, we were looking at Grin and we're like, how is anyone supposed to send this thing? And it's like a command line, and we're like, okay, well, maybe we could figure out how to solve this so we can get this up and running, serve the community. So we built an open source, multi-platform, basically a wallet that is very simple to transact. They told me I have one slide, so I actually have the demo here that we can go ahead and show off anytime after this talk. But basically, it's like a drag and drop system where you can just interact with somebody. We even created something that we call a dancing QR code, which actually turns the slate file into a graphical GIF, and you can just send this GIF through any messenger that you like. Since you know, everything kind of relies on communication back and forth. We even created our own decentralized messaging platform that you could actually talk to somebody and send Grin directly to them. This uses end-to-end encryption, so it's completely safe. We were never able to read it, and it's also federated, so you can make sure that everything is really private. Yeah, we're basically going to release this very soon, in about a week or two. More than happy to answer any questions right now. I have Dave over there who's going to field probably all your questions, just to be honest. So yeah, anything that anybody wants to say anything? Yes, sir.
You will have an iOS version of Grin running. So except for maybe the proof of work, there's a lot of cycles. You can actually do all of Grin.
No, we actually intend to do all of Grin. So for example, our current implementation is actually JavaScript, and it's actually our own implementation of JavaScript, including all the verification, everything like that. So the intent is actually open source that, and we're actually working on a Swift implementation of Grin as well.
And you actually were doing the proof of work though.
That's correct. That's correct.
Probably a little slow on the
It's actually not too bad. It is definitely slower. On a phone, yeah, it may be a little challenging, but it's tractable.
Anybody else?
So did you also re-implement the libsecp library in JavaScript?
That's a great question. So I actually started off doing that, and I was like, fuck this. This is not a good idea, right? Because the truth is, you have to go through the security validation work. There's timing attacks and things like that. So what I actually did is I actually took libsecp and just WASM'd it, right? And actually put a wrapper on that. So again, we'll put that out in open source so everyone can actually use this, and hopefully we'll see other projects using this and build on top of that.
Any more technical questions that I can't answer?
Have you thought of using the same technique to compile the Rust implementation of the full node and into?
To tell the truth, when I started this, I just want to actually build a blockchain for fun, right? So this is
totally understandable.
And I didn't know Rust, right? So and obviously there's no spec for Rust, so I actually looked at the Rust code and actually started writing in JavaScript. So I haven't actually tried that. I think that would actually be an interesting project, but right now I think my time is actually spent on doing the Swift implementation. So anyone who wants to try it, I'd love to actually help on that. Spend a bunch of time figuring out how to WASM all this stuff, so it would be fun.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, and thank you for our last presentation. We have David Burkett talk about C++. Sorry, Grin++.
Hi, I spent the last 3 or 4 months working on Grin++. It's C++ implementation of the Grin protocol. It's from scratch implementation. It's currently, it's working for Windows, the node is. There's no wallet yet, it's in progress. There's lots of things I've kept in mind while developing it, and I'm hoping that it can really be built upon for many different uses. Simplicity of the code is important to me. It was a little hard for me to read the original code, mostly because it's Rust, but one of the things I was focused on was just so that everybody could come in, pick it up, read, kind of understand as they go how Grin works. Speed was important. I add a few more indexes that allow me to quickly look up the header by height and things like that. That really help with speed. Modularity. So there's maybe 10 or 12 projects in it. Each one has a clear separation of concern. There's a very clear transaction pool. There's a very clear database. There's a very clear peer-to-peer layer, things like that. So there's, the separation of concerns helps a lot with, like, the next one, the scalability. So if someone wanted to run something like this on a server, they could quickly swap out the database project with their own implementation that uses Redis, Memcache, something like that, for faster access from many different users. Data integrity, so it was a bit of a challenge, but I found a way that I can basically, all writes would be atomic, so even if something happens, it crashes midway through processing a block or something like that. It just falls back to the previous block height. There's no corrupt data or anything like that. Configurability, number of threads, cache size, things like that. So like I mentioned, if someone wanted to run it on a server, they can increase the cache size, keep more in memory, speed things up, make a good Explorer or something like that, Block Explorer. User friendliness and completeness, these last two are more of a focus for the wallet, which is, as I said, in development. I'm looking at different techniques like Magic Wormhole. I'm looking at integrating that so that people don't have to mess with ports on their routers and things like that. And then, yeah, the completeness is just kind of wrapping it up all in one installer, one executable, so that you don't have to go start your node in one process and start your listener in the other and then the miner in another. You just sort of run this app. You turn on what you want, turn off what you don't want, things like that. That's pretty much it, just going from there. Any questions?
This is great you're doing this. Like Windows users are in general treated as second-class citizens in crypto. But did you look at the trade-offs sort of between making patches to the Rust implementation upstream versus like re-implementing all this stuff by yourself?
Yeah, and as the previous presenters pointed out, it's a lot of fun to code a blockchain. So there was a lot of that went into it. Also, I felt like I was a little guy amongst a bunch of big dogs in the Rust code. I didn't want to go start messing with a bunch of things, break everything, whatever. So it just felt like the right thing to do, just go start fresh, go. I had a little different focus, like mentioned here. So I think they're looking at it now, going back and making the current client Windows compatible. And there's a few. It's mostly just around a few dependencies that need taken care of. But I mean, I'll be around to help if anyone has questions around it.
Great. Any more questions?
Yeah, right here. I'm really excited about the Magic Wormhole thing. Maybe you can like speak to it a little bit. Also, any resources, anything that's been helpful for you. I'd be really curious to hear about it.
I mean, Magic Wormhole, just kind of a way that two parties, as long as they can communicate privately, securely, can share a few keywords that allows them to connect directly without, it's a way of getting around, NAT traversal, things like that. So currently the Grin client, the main way of sending coins is through the HTTPS protocol. Just the problems with that is people don't have their ports exposed, right? They have to, now every user has to know how to configure their router so that they can receive payments. This is just, the way of getting around that. As far as resources, I mean, the Python GitHub out there by Brian Warner is probably just your best bet to look at. I think Zcash has implemented it or is in process of implementing it too, so maybe watch them to see what they do as well. Yeah.
Implementation to help out to identify consensus bugs, and yours is a minority implementation, so it will not affect the network too much. Our question is regarding the speed. Have you done any benchmarking, for instance, on the initial block download to benchmark the performance advantage?
I have the headers are slightly faster. I don't have the exact numbers with me. The block download, there's still something in the Rust client that is much quicker, and I don't know why, like 50% quicker. But there's still lots of optimizations that I haven't performed yet. It's still sort of in the build it out, go back and clean it up stage. But the focus on speed was more along the underlying design, the way, like there were clear issues, and I think a lot of them have been resolved now, but there were clear issues with like looking up a header by height. That was something that in the past couldn't be done. I think Antioch changed the sync MMR to be able to do it there. But just by building out these different primitives, my hope was that the design would allow you to tweak, to do the optimizations that Grin's already done, and to hopefully catch up. One of them around the header, why it's quicker, is it's a single it just chooses a single peer for the header sync. Just finds a good peer that's fast and just keeps requesting the next one as they come in, and that actually resulted in a like 50% speed up. So, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you to all our presenters. The next slide. Okay, so these are resources where you can go. You don't have to take this down now. We'll be sending out these slides or making them available. We'll also have a newsletter for all of the people who didn't get to talk today and have all these wonderful ideas. We'll be able to push that out and send you guys updates. Now, I just wanted to hand it over to Gavin to just talk a little bit about the coordinate and track and joining in the discussion.
Yeah, so we're going to run an experiment that it's gone pretty well in other open source communities, but it's basically every couple of weeks we're going to do a Grin ecosystem call. So basically everything that's product on top of protocol, basically anything that's not protocol, it's a place for us to gather and talk about what are the needs, engineering, design, UX, basically what things are you running into, and the call can serve as kind of a function for organizing, getting people an on-ramp into the ecosystem, and then providing feedback to the core devs of like what's going on in the product level. So anyways, there'll be some notes on that, on when that's going on and how it's being organized in the Grin PM repo. And then I think Daniel set up the ecosystem, the Gitter ecosystem, where a lot of the product builders and things are going to join. So keep your eyes peeled there, and we're going to be kicking that off in a week or two.
Great, thank you. Thank you all, and I'm going to hand it back over to Turk to take care of the rest of the show.
All right, thank you, Karen.